The following was recorded on May 21st, 2025. Please keep in mind laws, guidelines, and processes may change over time. This is the Italian Citizenship Podcast, hosted by Marco Permunian and Rafael Di Furia. Hello there, and welcome to another edition of the Italian Citizenship Podcast, presented by Italiancitizenship.com. Of course, we are back at it again with Italian attorney Marco Permunian, and I am Rafael Di Furia. And yesterday on May 20th, 2025, the Italian Chamber of Deputies met to discuss the Tajani decree and put some of the finalizations into place, discussing how things will look moving forward. But Marco, there are a few things that may actually look interesting. And before we get into citizenship by descent, the one positive that seems to have come out of this, that I can see at least, is citizenship for those who lost their citizenship prior to 1992. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
The Chamber of Deputies decided yesterday to make changes to the text of the Tajani decree, which was issued on March the 28th of 2025, regarding individuals who lost their Italian citizenship through naturalization in a foreign country. So these individuals who had lost their citizenship due to the acquisition of a foreign citizenship through naturalization prior to 1992 can now have their Italian citizenship reinstated by making a self-declaration at the Italian consulate in the country in which they now reside. So it is no longer necessary to relocate to Italy for 1 year as per the old rules to reacquire Italian citizenship. It is sufficient to submit a self-declaration to the consulate. Now, there is a deadline for these individuals to be able to make this self-declaration, which would allow them to reacquire their citizenship without having to relocate to Italy. And this self-declaration can only be made until December the 31st of 2027.
So Marco, just to clarify, for those who would have lost their citizenship before 1992, they now have the ability to make sure that they have their citizenship intact, correct?
Correct.
So for those individuals, they would have the same full rights as any dual citizen. There's nothing that would be different about where their citizenship would stand in comparison with someone else.
That is correct.
Well, thank you, Marco, for telling us about that. And just to move on to the next topic, before we get on to citizenship by descent, what about citizenship for minors? For those who would be getting citizenship as a child moving forward, what will that be looking like?
It was established yesterday by the Chamber of Deputies that existing minors, so individuals who are under the age of 18 when this law passes, can be registered by their parent through a simple registration process, which is done through the consulate, but only until May the 31st of 2026. Now, to clarify, it's the simple registration process which can happen regardless of anything until May the 31st of 2026. There are other processes that can be used to register the birth of a minor and therefore to have the minor acquire Italian citizenship even after that date. And there are basically two more scenarios. If you register the birth of your minor child within 1 year from the birth, then your minor child can become an Italian citizen through a simple registration. So in the scenario that I talked about a moment ago, that applies to any minor child that is alive right now and that can be registered regardless of their age, as long as they're under 18. But then going forward, if you don't meet that deadline, minor children can be registered within 1 year from their birth. There is a third scenario which applies to minors in general that were not registered within 1 year from the birth, and that allows for minor children to become Italian citizens, but after their parent has acquired citizenship by descent, as long as the Italian parent resides in Italy for 2 consecutive years before or after the birth of the child.
Very interesting. And was there any specification whether one of your parents or both of your parents had to be Italian?
The text that was approved yesterday specifically mentions that just one of the parents needs to be an Italian citizen in order for the child to be registered. So it is sufficient, even in the scenario that the child is residing in Italy with the parents for 2 years, that only one parent was an Italian citizen in order for the child to be able to be registered.
And what about for children who are adopted?
It's possible for adopted children to also become Italian citizens by using the same rules. Of course, in this case, the need to register the birth certificate of the child is not within 1 year from the birth of the child, but within 1 year from the adoption date.
Well, Marco, this is all very interesting. And so maybe just to jump into citizenship by descent, from what you're saying, it sounds as though that there might not be any generational limit theoretically, as long as each generation would be registered by the time that they are the age of 1.
Correct. Going forward, if someone qualifies for citizenship by descent under the current rules, it's possible to keep registering children, and each generation will be able to register their child as long as the registration happens within 1 year from the birth of the child.
Well, that is fascinating to hear, that there may be this open system for those who are able to be registered in that way moving forward. But generally speaking, for citizenship by descent, what are the latest updates to the decree for things moving forward?
The text that was approved yesterday by the Chamber of Deputies includes some new provisions regarding the ability to apply for citizenship by descent, so jure sanguinis. If you are an individual born abroad, then the following rules will apply to you. You can only claim citizenship by descent if you have an Italian parent or grandparent who is exclusively an Italian citizen or who held exclusively Italian citizenship at the time of their death. The modifications to the decree approved yesterday also include additional provisions regarding individuals who had secured their appointments with an Italian consulate prior to March the 28th to be able to use the old rules that were in effect prior to the Tajani decree when they will apply for citizenship by descent during their appointments with the Italian consulates. And the same applies, of course, to people who had requested an appointment with an Italian municipality prior to March the 28th, even if the appointment takes place after March the 28th. And of course, the Chamber of Deputies yesterday also approved the provisions that were previously included in the Tajani decree, according to which individuals who have submitted their applications to a consulate, municipality, or Italian court prior to March the 28th, that they can use the rules that were in effect prior to March the 28th. So in short, if you submitted your applications through an Italian court, municipality, or consulate prior to March the 28th, then the old rules will apply to you. But the old rules will apply to you even if you had requested an appointment to an Italian consulate or municipality prior to March the 28th, even if the appointment will be in years from now.
Wow. So for those who did get their appointments, that does mean that they can apply under the old rules. But what about for those who weren't able to get appointments? Because those have been difficult to get over the last years.
Of course, it's very important to note here that while the final text of the decree now specifically says that whoever was able to request an appointment prior to March 28th can use the old rules, but as we all know, there are many people who were waiting for a consulate to give them an appointment, to put them in a waiting list, or who were trying to get an appointment with a consulate for sometimes months or years. And as we discussed in other episodes of the Italian Citizenship Podcast, many of those individuals who had their documents ready were already in the process of petitioning the Italian courts due to lack of appointments at their local Italian consulate, meaning that they were in the process of petitioning the court because they were unable, after several attempts, to get their appointment with the consulate. So now that the rules have changed, it makes even more sense to file court cases claiming that the petitioner had been waiting for the consulate to release an appointment for a very long time, and that now, given that the laws have changed, the only recourse that they have is to of course, petition the court, because we all agree that the text of the decree does indicate that somebody needed to have requested an appointment with a consulate to be able to use the old rules. But what about those people who wanted to request an appointment and were unable to do so because there were no appointments? Of course, that is going to be a very strong argument to be made in court. And therefore, we expect many successful outcomes for those people who are going to claim in court that they couldn't book an appointment because the consulate was not releasing appointments, and therefore to them it should be allowed to use the old rules as well. And at ICA, we are already assisting several of our clients in preparing to petition the court due to the fact that they had been waiting for an appointment for a long time, and maybe they just got their documents ready and now they were ready to apply prior to March 28. But if there had been appointments available, they would have done so. But since there were no appointments available, we're going to make their argument in court and justify the fact that the application could not have been submitted, but that also an appointment could not have been requested prior to March 28 due to the lack of appointments.
So Marco, what about maybe in the situation for somebody who would be eligible for Italian citizenship by descent, but based under these new rules because their grandparent naturalized, that would cut them out? But is there any way for those individuals who had a grandparent who was a naturalized citizen of another country, is there still a way to be able to get Italian citizenship through your grandparent?
Like we just mentioned, if you have an Italian parent or grandparent who emigrated to another country, if they became a citizen of that country through naturalization, you can no longer get citizenship by descent under the new rules. But you can still use your parent or grandparent who was born in Italy to claim Italian citizenship through residency. Now, the changes that were applied yesterday by the Chamber of Deputies indicate that if you have an Italian parent or grandparent, regardless of whether they ever became naturalized in another country, you can get Italian citizenship after residing in Italy for 2 years. Before the Tajani decree, the residency requirement was 3 years of residency for people with an Italian-born parent or grandparent. Now that residency requirement has been brought down to 2 years. So in short, if you don't qualify for citizenship through descent, but you have an Italian-born parent or grandparent, you can obtain Italian citizenship through residency after residing in Italy for 2 years.
So then in this case, what would be the way that a person would be able to move to Italy to be able to reside in Italy? Is there some special type of visa that will be put in place, or what will be the pathway to citizenship in that case?
There are several visas that are made available by the Italian government to relocate to Italy, such as the elective residency visa, also known as the retirement visa, the digital nomad visa, the student visa, the investor visa. So all of these are valid options to relocate to Italy. And let's keep in mind that it's not necessary to live in Italy for the entire time. It is sufficient to reside in Italy for the majority of the time. Now, the Chamber of Deputies yesterday also approved a provision regarding the work visa, meaning that if an individual is relocating to Italy with the purpose of applying for Italian citizenship through a parent or a grandparent, they can access the work visa regardless of the quota established by the Italian government. So in short, there is a limit of work visas that can be issued per year by the government. And if you are applying for citizenship through a parent or a grandparent, these limits in terms of how many visas can be released by the government don't apply to you.
Thank you, Marco. And given the complexity of these new rules, and just for the sake of clarity, would you be able to give us a quick summary of these new paths to citizenship through your ancestry?
You can apply for Italian citizenship by descent if you have an Italian parent or grandparent who is exclusively an Italian citizen or who was exclusively an Italian citizen at the time of their death. However, it's possible to obtain citizenship through a parent or grandparent, regardless of whether they became citizens of another country if you relocate to Italy on a visa for 2 years. And like I mentioned, it's not necessary to reside in Italy for the entire time. It is sufficient to reside in Italy for the majority of the time. Now, regarding minor children, it's possible to register the birth of any individual who is under the age of 18 at the time in which this law passes through a simple registration process done through the consulate, as long as the registration process is initiated prior to May the 31st of 2026. Otherwise, it's possible to register the birth of a child through a simple registration process done through the consulate before the child turns 1 year of age. And finally, it's possible to register the birth of a child and for the child to become an Italian citizen even after the child turns 1 year of age, as long as the Italian parent resides in Italy for 2 consecutive years before or after the birth of the child. And finally, for those individuals who were born in Italy and lost their Italian citizenship due to naturalization in a foreign country prior to 1992, it's possible to reacquire citizenship upon making a declaration at the local Italian consulate prior to December the 31st of 2027. So a facilitated path to reacquisition of Italian citizenship was introduced. Now, these are the new rules that went into effect with the Tajani decree. But regarding citizenship by descent, it's necessary to specify that whoever either submitted their applications through a consulate, municipality, or court prior to March the 28th of 2025, or the people who requested an appointment with an Italian consulate or municipality prior to March the 28th of 2025, it's possible to use the old rules, and that applies also to an appointment that will take place in the future. And also, it's possible to petition the Italian courts and argue the lack of appointments if you were looking for an appointment in the recent months or years and you were never able to get one. So the fact that there were no appointments available when you wanted to submit your application to a consulate is a valid argument that can be made in court, and that may allow you to use the old rules.
Well, Marco, thank you so much again for making yourself available of this episode of the Italian Citizenship Podcast, this very important episode of the Citizenship Podcast, discussing the latest about what's going on with the Tajani decree and the finalization of the rules. Of course, for more information like this, be sure that you're subscribed to this YouTube channel as well as the audio-only podcast. But of course, if you're subscribed to the YouTube channel, that means you're also automatically subscribed to Ask the Italian Lawyer, where we go into more about Italian law and even purchasing property in Italy, as well as the Italian Citizenship Podcast. And of course, being subscribed on YouTube with the notifications turned on means that you'll be notified when these episodes come out with the latest information. But of course, we have been here again with Italian attorney Marco Permunian from ItaliancitizenshipAssistance.com. I'm Rafael Di Furia. Stay safe and healthy out there, and we'll see you all next time. Thank you.
Thank you.